Virgo. Uh, Virgo, close everything else. March 9th. That date just landed in this reading like a stone in still water. Let's go, Virgos. Light travels. That is the first thing. Uh, the first thing to understand, um, not metaphorically as a physical fact, as the foundational reality of how seeing works. The light that reaches your eye left its source before you were looking, before you were positioned to receive it, before you even knew there was something to look at. The star you see, yeah, you see tonight, sent its light toward you hundreds of years before tonight existed. Before, before you existed. Before anyone was standing in this precise location, aimed in this precise direction, capable of receiving what was already traveling. The receiving is not the originating. What arrives on March 9th has been traveling, not from hundreds of years away, but from a distance that is not purely physical. From a distance measured in the slow accumulation of moments and decisions and withheld things and readiness not yet achieved and timing not yet right, and the particular patience of something that knew, in whatever way such things know, that there was a specific date, a specific position of the receiver, a specific quality of readiness in the person this light was always aimed at. That person is you. That date is March 9th. The light arrives when the receiver is finally positioned to receive it. Not before, not after, when. Angels, not the winged, robed Renaissance painting version, not the supernatural intermediaries of formal theology, but the concept beneath the concept, the messengers, the carriers of information between what is known and what is not yet known, the function, not the form. The idea that certain things find their way to certain people through channels that are not entirely explicable by the visible mechanics of cause and effect. You have had messengers in your life. You may not have called them that. A conversation that arrived at exactly the moment it was needed. A piece of information delivered by someone who had no reason to know you needed it. A door that opened from the inside, in a wall you had not known contained a door, operated by a hand you never saw. These things happen. Not always, not to everyone, but to people who have reached a certain quality of openness, not passive openness, not the limp availability of someone who has stopped caring what arrives, but the active, earned, hard won openness of someone who has been through enough to stop insisting that things arrive only through the channels they can see and understand and control. You have that quality of openness right now. It was not always present. It developed through whatever you have moved through to arrive at this precise stretch of days, this march, this life, this version of yourself standing at the receiving end of something that has been traveling toward you for longer than you know. The messengers found the opening. March 9th, a Monday. Ordinary on its surface, unremarkable in the way that all specific dates are unremarkable until they are not. Until something happens on them that retroactively transforms them from just another day into a day you will remember by number, by the specific quality of the light that morning, by what you were doing when the thing arrived, by the before and after that the day creates the dividing line. It draws through the timeline of a life, the way certain dates become coordinates rather than just calendar squares. Not all dates become coordinates. Most pass. Most are filed in the undifferentiated archive of time spent rather than time marked. But some, and you have had some, the difference between the ones that pass and the ones that stay, some press themselves into the memory with a specificity that has nothing to do with the external significance of the event and everything to do with the interior shift the event produced. March 9th has that quality in what is forming around you. Not because a single dramatic event is scheduled to occur. Life does not schedule itself with the clean legibility of a calendar appointment. But because the convergence of several things that have been moving independently, the ripening of several conditions that have been developing in parallel, seems to reach a specific density around this date, a threshold, the point at which what was approaching becomes arrived, the point at which the light, after its long travel, finally reaches the eye that was always its destination. Shock. Let's not be soft about this word. It means something specific, and it is worth inhabiting the specificity rather than immediately softening it into something more comfortable. Shock is the response of a system to an input that exceeds its current predictive model. It is not pain shock, and pain are different experiences even when they arrive together. Shock is the gap, the specific, momentary, slightly vertiginous gap between what you expected and what arrived. The shock here is a gap between your current model of your situation, the understanding you are carrying right now of where things stand, what is possible, what is likely, what the trajectory of certain important dimensions of your life looks like from where you currently stand, and the reality that March 9th appears to be carrying toward you. The gap is not small, which means the shock is not small, which means the model you are currently operating from, the set of assumptions and expectations and calibrated hopes that constitute your working understanding of your own life right now, is about to be revised. Not in a detail, not in a minor way that requires a small update to a small section of the map, but in a way that may require you to look at the whole map again, to reconsider what you thought you knew about where you are and what is available from here. That kind of revision is what people mean when they say shocked. Not startled, not surprised in the pleasant way of an unexpected gift. Shocked in the full, genuine, my model was wrong and now I have to build a new one sense of the word. The new model will be better. That much is clear in the quality of what is traveling toward this date. The revision will not be a downgrade. It will be an upgrade so significant that the current model will, from the other side of it, seem almost quaint, almost small, almost touching in its modesty about what was actually possible. What the angels are saying specifically, not a revelation about the nature of reality, not a mystical communication of universal truths, something much more personal and much more immediate than that. something that is relevant specifically to you, to the specific configuration of your life as it currently stands, to the specific unresolved questions you have been carrying, to the specific hopes that you have been holding at a careful distance, because holding them too close has historically cost you something. The message is about those hopes, the ones you stopped mentioning, the ones that live in the part of you that has learned to want things quietly, that has learned through the specific curriculum of your particular experience that wanting loudly produces a kind of exposure that the world is not always careful with, that the hopes you protect most fiercely are the ones worth protecting most fiercely, that the careful distance is not coldness, it is the appropriate container for something that has not yet been confirmed as safe to bring closer. The message is bring them closer. Not because confirmation has arrived in the form you have been waiting for. It hasn't yet, not fully, not in the form that would satisfy the part of you that requires unambiguous evidence before it will fully invest. But because March 9th is bringing something that functions as enough to shift the calculation, enough to change the ratio of risk to safety in a direction that makes the careful distance no longer necessary in the way it was necessary before. Enough to let the hopes be the size they actually are. Without the container, without the careful management of their visibility, without the preemptive miniaturization that protection has required, the transmission. Light from a distant source carries information. This is not metaphor either, it is physics. The wavelength carries data about the composition of the source, the distance, the movement toward or away. The light itself is the message. The traveling is the delivery. And the receiver, the eye, the instrument, the person, positioned at the end of the long journey of the light, reads the message not by translating a code, but simply by looking, by being present at the moment of arrival with the capacity to receive what arrives. The transmission heading toward March 9th has a wavelength, a frequency, a specific quality that distinguishes it from ordinary communication, from the routine exchange of information between people navigating ordinary circumstances. It carries the specific frequency of something that has been held too long at too great a distance, finally making its approach at speed. You will feel the frequency before you understand the content. This is always how transmission at this level works. The body registers the approach before the mind has assembled the interpretation. The chest changes. The quality of attention changes. Something that has been background becomes foreground without your conscious direction. In the days before March 9th, and you are in those days now, moving through them, pay attention to that shift, to what starts moving from background to foreground, to what your attention keeps returning to without your instruction, to what the body is preparing for in its quiet, thorough, always several steps ahead way. The body already knows the frequency. It has been waiting for this transmission for longer than you have been consciously aware of waiting. What arrives alongside the shock, not instead of it, alongside it. Simultaneously, in the same moment that the gap opens between the old model and the new reality, something else opens too. Something that the shock makes room for by clearing the space that the old model was occupying. Clarity, the specific clean, post-shock clarity of someone who has been navigating by an incomplete map and has just been handed a better one, who sees suddenly and without ambiguity where they actually are, which is not where the incomplete map suggested they were, who understands, with the particular relief of long confusion finally resolving, why certain things felt the way they felt, why certain directions produced the results they produced, why certain efforts seemed to vanish without effect, while certain apparently minor actions produced disproportionate outcomes. The better map explains all of it. And the explanation, the understanding of the actual terrain rather than the assumed terrain immediately reorganizes what is possible from here, what routes are available, what distances are manageable. What was always nearby that the incomplete map had been placing at an unreachable distance. Some things that seemed far are close. Some things that seemed closed are open. Some things that seem to require years of additional approach are already, with the correct map, within reach. The shock reveals the map. The clarity is what you do with it. The quality of March 9th in the days that follow it, not just the day itself, what the day initiates, because the shock is a door, not a room. What matters is not the opening, but what you find when you walk through it. The days that follow March 9th carry the specific energy of someone moving through a landscape that has been fundamentally clarified, that has gone from ambiguous and difficult to read to specific and navigable in the space of whatever hours the 9th contains. Those days will feel different, not louder or more dramatic, if anything, quieter. The particular quiet of resolution, of a question that has been running in the background of your consciousness, consuming processing power, generating the low-level hum of unresolved uncertainty, that question finding its answer. And the system that was running the question going quiet, releasing the resources it was using, making those resources available for what comes next. What comes next is substantial. The clarity enables action that the ambiguity was preventing. The better map permits movement that the incomplete map was making feel too risky to attempt. The specific, concrete, finally confirmed understanding of where you actually stand in love, in your life's work, in the various unresolved threads that have been waiting for this information before they could be picked up again. That understanding is the fuel for the period that follows the 9th. March 9th is not the destination. It is the refueling. One more thing the light carries: direction. Not just information about the source, information about the movement of the source, whether it is moving toward you or away from you, whether the gap is closing or opening, whether what you are receiving is the leading edge of an approach or the trailing light of a departure. What is approaching March 9th is moving toward you, closing the gap, reducing the distance, arriving at speed after a period of movement that may have appeared from your vantage point as stillness because it was happening in a direction you were not facing, in a dimension you were not monitoring, through a channel you did not know was the active channel. It was always moving. You simply were not positioned to observe the movement. And March 9th is the date on which your position and the position of what is approaching achieve the specific alignment that makes the observation not just possible, but unavoidable. You cannot miss it. Not because it will be loud or dramatic or clearly labeled as the thing you were waiting for, but because the gap between what you expected and what arrives will be undeniable. Because the shock, the real, genuine, model revising, breath catching shock of a life exceeding its own predicted limits, is not a subtle experience. You will know on March 9th, when the light that has been traveling arrives, when the messenger's message lands, when what the angels have been saying becomes finally and irrevocably something you can see with your own eyes. And when you see it, let yourself be shocked fully, without managing it, without immediately reaching for the interpretation that makes it smaller. Let the gap open, because what fills it is everything the light was carrying all along. For you, only ever for you,